everyone. This is little sister Hayes from the Bosnet family coming to you live from Southern California with our mascot Nigel here. And as we record this, it's a few days before the Christmas holidays in the United States. And we are so fortunate and happy to have our special guest, Michele Turner, with us today. Welcome, Michele.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. We're absolutely thrilled. So today we're talking about Michele's new book, Lessons Learned, Stories of Continuity and Resilience. And in this holiday season, a lot of us are talking about gift ideas. I wanted to suggest to each of you that this is a gift that you might want to consider getting for yourself. As you can see, it's a quick read, really insightful, really impactful, great stocking stuffer. And quite frankly, I can honestly tell our viewers and our readers that my life is better because I read your book, Michele. So it's really a thrill to have you on our show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Michele is the head of global resilience with Amazon, and that's a company that I know many of you around the world at our different locations are familiar with. When we talk about business continuity and resilience, this is a field that I work in as well. And the groundbreaking work that Michele has done with this book is she's managed to explain how we can apply those professional practices into our personal lives and help us live our best life, which is what we all want to do. One of the reasons, Michele, we wanted to have you on now with your book just being out. It's such great timing for the new year, as well as people are getting ready to turn that page and have a fresh new start.
Yes.
Yeah, so the first thing we want to get into is, can you please help our viewers and our listeners visualize what's your writing process like? Are you on Scrivener? Are you in a laptop, in a coffee shop, writing on the back of a napkin like Harry Potter late at night? Is there a playlist? We want to be able to really visualize what your author experience is like.
Gotcha. So, I don't have a specific playlist, but what I do, I have a red chair, and I'm actually looking at the red chair now. I have a red chair in the corner. I have, first I have to start off with my legal pad or my journal, and I just start jotting some things down. And when I feel like I have a solid outline, and when I feel I have just a little bit of meat in there, I then go back to my laptop and I just sit there and I jam. I jam things out on paper. But yeah, this is actually my first book. So that's the process that I use for this book. And while it took some time to get the book down, that's the way I roll.
Yeah, and I have to say, for those of you out there who are sometimes into reading, sometimes indifferent to reading, this book, Lessons Learned, Stories of Continuity and Resilience, is really well written. It's an easy read because, Michele, I was going to commend you. Your thoughts are so well organized and so easy to follow. The reader can really feel like they're in your mind during this read.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. In the mind of Michele. Okay.
Absolutely. We're in the mind of Michele. So what I was sharing with our viewers earlier is I'm a seasoned business continuity professional, so I was able to really effortlessly follow the concepts that are in this book. For our listeners who are outside that industry and our viewers who are outside that industry, what would you offer them in terms of how they can relate to this metaphor that you've used in your book? Because I know it's accessible for them too.
So the metaphor, if we take a look at the methodology parse, so the book is structured between those chapters to spell out parse, prepare, assess, remediate, sustain, and examine.
Right.
With another E for education. So if you want to get French parse.
There we go. We like it.
But with that, one of the ways that people have said that they've connected with it, even if they've not been in the continuity field, was that it offers those areas where you can, from a personal perspective, say, you know what, I thought I might have been the only one that was going through that. Wait a minute, somebody else is. So when you talk about things like reduction in force, I have a story in there about how I aligned that reduction in force, where I really had to start taking a look at risk managing myself.
Right.
How did I deal with something that was significant like that? Or when we talk about health issues, we're so busy at going. Well, you know what? Sometimes you have to slow down in order to speed up. And so, how do you do that? And how do you make sure that you're comfortable in that process? You don't jeopardize your health. And there are some situations that we address from a continuity perspective where we definitely have to get in there and gather information, but sometimes we have to take a step back as well. So those are a couple examples of sort of aligning the personal and the professional.
Oh, it's fantastic. Now, one of my favorite parts of the book is you have this really what I felt was very creative and innovative suggestion to do. For those of us in the resilience industry, we are well familiar with the term risk assessments. So you suggest that, again, the timing of turning of the new calendar year, that families, individuals, parents sitting down with one's child, doing risk assessments for how one's personal health is looking, work-life balance, how the family's risk assessment is looking going into the new year. And I have to say that was an aha moment for me, because even though I've been in this space for a decade now, I never thought of turning the magnifying glass on my own life and doing a risk assessment in that direction.
Yes, actually, so one of the things I don't refer to it as work-life balance
Right.
because for me, that's what was really hanging me up. I was trying
Yeah.
so hard to have my family and to have the work and all of that just take place simultaneously. For me, that just couldn't be done. And so once I said, you know what, it's about work-life harmony, and what do I need to do to make sure that I'm able to satisfy my own high bar from a work or an organization perspective? What do I need to do there? But how can I make sure that, look, my family is always going to be my highest priority? So those balance, those things to balance really are offset as a right off the top, because my family is right up there. So yeah, this is the perfect time this new year to say, okay, how did I do last year? Let's do a risk assessment. What was the impact? How many controls did I have in place to be able to manage these risks? And then, hey, determine if you need to do something different in the new year.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing. And I felt like that was one of the most thought-provoking parts of your work here, is sharing with people the notion of challenging that cliche work-life balance. So for our viewers and listeners, Michele obviously has built a highly successful career in the resilient space. She's based out of
Thank you.
Washington State here in the United States, which is in the Pacific Northwest. So it's a wonderful culture, lots of family activities, beautiful weather. What advice do you have for those who are really trying to, I mean, coming off of the past 2 years, our viewers and listeners have really had a challenging time, like most people around the world. It's been tough. If they're
Yeah.
trying to have 2022 be the best year ever for their family, what recommendations do you have from that place of how to have a amazing and successful career, but also an amazing, successful family life?
You know what? Right off the top, you have to give yourself grace. And
Okay.
that took a long time for me to get comfortable with,
Yeah.
because I wasn't sure, well, if I don't want to give myself too much leeway here, because I should be raising the bar. I should be doing this. But you know what? You're human. That's the thing about it. And so we have to give ourselves grace, and we're not all perfect. And you know what? When you make a mistake, that just shows you, okay, that didn't work. Let's not ever do that again. Let's try something different. So yeah, definitely show yourself some grace. Make sure that you are realistic and you set those boundaries. One of the things sometimes people will say, you know, I'm doing all of this. I'm working till 2 and 3 in the morning, and they're really frustrated.
Right.
But if your team or your management sees you doing that, sees that that's your norm, then you can't really blame them if they ask you questions around 1 or 2 in the morning, because they're looking to see, well, how does this person like to work? So I had to get real with myself and say, you know what? I know I absolutely love work. I'm a recovering workaholic, but I've got to really set my own boundaries so that I can show people how I prefer to engage, how I prefer to be treated, so that I'm not giving them mixed messages. So hopefully that's responsive to your question.
You know, that's really brilliant. Hashtag recovering workaholic. I think so many people will relate to that because that is the shadow side of the COVID working from home experience for those of us
Yes,
who've been in it. You know, the on the surface, it's like, oh, hooray for the pets. They have their human home. But the thing is, I know many people, including myself, have struggled with the boundary of that laptop is always on, beckoning,
exactly.
you know, that work is there. Oh, I can't sleep. Maybe I should go over and do some more work. So it's really, really been an interesting challenge the past couple of years to try to um, create that beautiful coexistence between family and work. But that
Yes.
actually, Michelle, is a beautiful segue to the next thing I wanted to talk with you about, which is in your book, Lessons Learned, Short Stories of Continuity and Resilience. One of the themes that really struck me was resilience and recovery. Now, for those of us in this business continuity industry, we are very familiar with those terms in terms of keeping an organization or an industry flowing. But I want to turn the spotlight more personally on ourselves because,
Yes,
Michelle, I commend you. You really opened up to your readers. You shared some pretty personal things about some health issues you've overcome,
I
some
did.
really definitive moments in your life. I related to those, as some of our readers and listeners are aware. My husband had a heart transplant in 2018. I myself had a major health issue back in 1998. So those are themes that, even though it's so personal to talk about, ironically, it's almost universal. A lot of people can relate to themselves or a family member having a heavy medical situation. So, what words of encouragement or advice do you have for people who are, you know what, I've just got this heavy diagnosis, or they might still be recovering with lingering effects from COVID over the past couple years in
Yeah.
themselves or a family member? How can they find recovery and resilience going into the new year?
Well, first of all, it's about nomenclature. It's about verbiage. So, as opposed to saying you are going to bounce back, let's talk about bouncing forward. Okay,
Oh,
we
that's
don't want to go back
beautiful.
to where we were. We want to go straight ahead. And
Oh,
so,
amen.
even though it seems like a little thing, let's start to change how we talk about this right off the top. And
Yeah, that's
so,
great.
as we're bouncing forward, we want to again make sure that we give ourselves grace, but we definitely want to make sure that we are paying attention to what our body is telling us when it comes to health situations. For me, my body was screaming when it became a little bit difficult for me to breathe, and I had to sort of have, I called it chain breathing, where you sort of like that. It, I was so stubborn. I was so stubborn to say, you know what? No, I've got my daughter's recital. I've got a C-level, you know, CEO, CIO suite meeting in the morning. I've got to keep pushing through. Well, I just about pushed through to the other side. And so you just really have to make sure that you are honest with yourself, paying attention, make sure that you are taking time for yourself, and making sure that you understand what are those things that I can do just to be still. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, just to sit and be still. So again, my red chair, every now and again, I make myself go sit in my red chair, and it's really not a punishment. It's actually just time to just sort of be and be still.
You know, I love that. And I loved your description in your book. I actually felt like I had a little moment of Zen there with reading about your Earl Grey tea and the fuzzy gray blanket and the red chair. I put myself here for our viewers because you can see just off camera, there's my space for myself. You guys can see my Peloton bike.
Excellent.
My brother Kush Hayes is talking about Peloton on his last episode of Waffle Box. So I'm Battle Princess out there for anyone who wants to follow me in Peloton world. But it's true. I mean, that bike really makes a difference for me in terms of being able to tune out everything and just say,
There you
okay, you know
go.
what? I'm making this choice in the next 30 minutes. And some of you might not be having a red chair in your home. You might not have a spin bike, and you might not be interested in having a spin bike, but the idea is finding the alchemy and the magic that works for
There
you
you
to
go.
be able to plug in and nourish yourself. All of these emergency response preparations that we do in the resilience industry, the brilliance of Michelle's work is she's suggesting that let's turn all of that focus and care on ourselves as well and make sure that we're functioning well. Now, the other thing that is so amazing about your book, I mean, it's a great read on so many levels, just
Yeah.
multifaceted angles are braided together. But I want to talk about your amazing parents for a moment because
Ah,
they're just so amazing. I've
me
never
and
met them
Leona.
yet. I feel like I know them and I love them from reading your memoir here. So you have a really remarkable account of your parents' courtship that took place through writing letters over 3 years.
Yeah.
And then when they met for the first time, your father decisively proposed marriage that morning. And now they've been married for decades. How many years has it been now, Michele?
I think it's been around 54, 50, 53, 54, something like that.
Yeah, so I really want to drill into that example for a bit because there is a certain amount of courage and decisiveness that went into that on both sides. Your father obviously had the courage and decisiveness to decide, this is my bride, that's it, I'm going to propose, we're going to take this step. And then your mother had the courage and decisiveness to go for it too. The result, obviously, the world is a better place because you're here and their amazing legacy, but I feel like that must have been a really interesting combination of people to grow up with. And how does that courage and decisiveness show up in your own life? Because some of us struggle with that. You know, we're like, oh, shoot, is this the right step to take? What do you have for our viewers and listeners who want to learn to trust themselves to really take those big steps?
Well, you know, I come from my mom and dad. They're just absolutely amazing. So I'm glad that came out in the book. I look up to them. They are so resilient. The things that they have gone through in their lifetime, and again, there are some stories in the book that talk about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities. Um, but I was raised with the thought that number one, you can do whatever you feel you need to do. You do need to take a step back, and if there's something that's just not going in the direction you need for it to go, then let's talk about that. The courage that it took for them to basically say yes to themselves. Now, part of it was they were introduced through church, the Mennonite church, that context there. And so one Mennonite pastor said to another Mennonite pastor, I have someone that I think would be a good match for a person that you have in your church. And so
Oh, that's
um,
sweet.
they went slow, very slow, and wrote letters for 3 years. But when they were in front of each other, they knew that all of the things that they were writing about and their background, they were sort of equally yoked, as they say. And so they knew that they could move forward from there. And I'm just so blessed because I've seen resilience in action. I have seen when my mother had to have surgery and have her eye removed, unfortunately, due to detached retina. I have seen her say, well, you know what? I'm pretty sure God will let me in the pearly gates with just one eye. So let's do this.
Yeah.
But just really being able to bounce forward, as I mentioned before. I've just had great examples of that through my life. So there's no way I could do anything different.
I love that bouncing forward. No, it's true. And for those of you who read Michelle's work, you'll see her parents did grow up in a time that was very different culturally in the United States. They overcame a lot. I relate to their decisiveness too, because I have shared about this on our website previously. I've been married for 22 years now, but my husband proposed to me after 3 months. So I kind of get
Ah,
that concept of, that other cliche about when you know, you know. So sometimes people do feel that certainty, but translating that into the rest of our lives is really interesting as well. I think bouncing forward and what Michele is sharing with us about, well, what's the fallback position? If it doesn't work, let's pivot and let's just learn from it and keep rolling. I think those are really universal and wonderful concepts. So we wanted to also ask you, Michele, what projects are on the horizon for you? Because you're a pretty fascinating lady and we know you always have a lot going on.
I do have a few things going on. You know, from a writing perspective, I would love to go out there and try my hand at some fiction. I tend to travel a lot, or at least I did prior to the pandemic. So whenever I travel, I try to make sure that I get some meaningful pictures that will really take me back to that time. And so there's a possibility that there could be some sort of photography book or something of that nature on the horizon. We'll see. But right now, I'm so focused on, my day job, making sure that I'm able to assist the industry and doing presentations and presenting in different areas, that I've got enough on my plate, and I've got those two wonderful grandsons of mine. And so I've got to make sure that I'm spending time with them as well. But yeah, I have a lot planned, so you'll just have to wait and see.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So the thriving, resilient career, the thriving family, Michele is making all of that happen. Are there any other websites you want to mention, or anything else that you would like to share with our readers and viewers?
Well, let's see. I do have a website, www.m2turnerauthor.com. And on that site, you're able to select the book from whatever area you'd like to do it, be a Barnes and Noble or Amazon or wherever. I also have an area where you can purchase directly from me, and I'd be more than happy to autograph the book for you. There's a gift pack there where you can get a lessons learned box with a candle and a copy of the book. And then there's also a post-it note area. And I think I gave you one of
Yes,
these.
I'm blessed to have the autographed copy right here.
Excellent.
Post-it notes.
Excellent. So you'll get one of these with lessons learned, short stories of continuity and resilience on it. So that's part of the gift pack. But yeah, definitely stop on by there. And I believe there's a Facebook area, Instagram area as well. But please, I'd love to get your feedback when you have an opportunity, when the readers have an opportunity to take a look at the book. Please give me your feedback via reviews on Amazon. That would be great.
Yeah, and Michele is a remarkably accessible author, considering the heights that she has attained in her career and with her success. I know that she will be receptive to all of that feedback and correspondence
Definitely.
that you all send her. The book is Lessons Learned, Short Stories of Continuity and Resilience by Michele L. Turner, the head of Global Resilience for Amazon. Michele, we are so fortunate to get to turn over into the new year with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and all of the wonderful optimism that'll help everyone have a better new year. We really appreciate you, and we wish you and your family all of the best here from the Bosnet family.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you again for having me on the show, and happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone. We'll see you soon.
From the Bosnet family.